But this particular night, perfectly ordinary night, I went to bed around 11ish, which was normal for us. Went into the room, went to sleep, perfect, nothing odd about the night. The room was dark because it was quite high up, so the street lighting didn't shine a bright light in there, but you could distinguish the shapes of all the furniture, and colours were in terms of shades of grey and black. You couldn't have picked out colours in the light. Anyway, I'd gone to sleep, and I don't know how long I'd been asleep or quite when I woke up. It was still dark, and I woke up and I sort of just laid there and I thought, oh God, what's wrong with me? I felt really ill. I felt sort of slightly sick, slightly feverish, just very, very odd. And I sort of laid there feeling uneasy, and I thought, God, I'm really ill, there's something really wrong. Thinking I'm going to have to phone the other co-worker at the other house to get somebody to come round. I turned over in the bed, I'd been facing the wall. I turned over and had my eyes open, and there was a figure of a woman stood maybe 2-3 feet away from the bed. She seemed quite tall, but then I was laid down in the bed and she was stood up. Her silhouette was very simple, sort of shape, long dress, sort of seemed to be quite high-necked. Her face I could distinguish was paler, but I couldn't see her features clearly, and her head was in my direction, and I very much felt that she was looking at me, and I was absolutely petrified. I was really, really scared, and she just didn't move. She just stood there. I mean, I can't remember whether her arms were by her side or in front of her. She was very still, and I didn't even debate in my head, you're not seeing this. I knew I was seeing it, and I was very frightened. And the problem was, I was completely trapped. The bed was in the corner of the room, the door was sort of over here, and she was stood in between, and there's no way I was going to get out of that bed to pass her or even attempt to go around her. I can't express how frightened I was. So I just got my head under the duvet, and I stayed under the duvet, sweated it out, until I thought morning must be here, and I kept sort of peering out, waiting for the light to come. The light came, I got my clothes, and I left that room. The next day, of course, at 9 o'clock in the morning, the co-worker from the other house came round, and it had really shaken me up. I was still sort of feeling strange and very, very depressed, and the feeling from her was one of total desolation, and I just felt so depressed, and I'm not a depressive person at all. And I said to the co-worker, I'd actually told him I'd had a dream, because I'd decided at this point it must have been a nightmare, a dream. And I told him and just said, God, I couldn't sleep last night and this happened, I saw this, I was so scared. And he just looked at me and said, don't say any more, you've got to speak to this guy called Ken. And he wouldn't sort of elaborate. He said, wait till Ken comes in this afternoon, to take over. So I waited, this guy came in, and I said to him, I think I had this really weird dream, dreamt that I saw a ghost, I think. And he said, oh, what did she look like? And I knew when he said that, what did she look like, that he'd seen it. So I described what I'd seen, and he and the other co-worker was sat there as well, just smiling all the time, and apparently every detail tallied. But this guy, Ken, had seen her much clearer. He'd watched her, he hadn't been as frightened as I was, and he watched her disappear through the wall. And the second time he saw her was in broad daylight. There was a full-length mirror on the wall. He had his foot on a chair, tying his shoelace one morning, looked up to sort of just fluff his hair, and there she was in the reflection of the mirror, and she just disappeared. She melted away, she didn't move away from him. And as I say, every detail tallied, though his description was much clearer because he'd seen her in daytime. And I never slept in that room again. I wouldn't sleep. There was a smaller sort of cupboard, and I slept in that. I wouldn't go in that room again because I was so frightened.